Welcome to another episode of So You Want Your Kids to Be Great at Sport. My name's Ben Russell and I am here again with Kirk Bowyer, co-founder of Mini Athletics, and Nathan Tyson, who is the franchisee at Mini Athletics, Nottingham and Loughborough, and former retired now professional footballer. We are also joined today by a former tennis player, is that correct? Matt Taylor.
Yeah, I think you could call me that.
Yeah, so Matt is a professional tennis coach and a business owner. He has played and worked in the field of tennis since the age of 7 years old. So really fitting for the topic of our podcast about children and kids being great at sport. As a player, you got up to the highest level of international junior tennis. Is that correct?
Yeah, I did okay. Yeah, I played at the highest level of events, like Junior Wimbledon and stuff like that. So I did okay with juniors. Yeah.
Hold on, he did okay. Got to Junior Wimbledon, did okay.
So
sure. I was quite a good junior. I was one of the better players in the country by the age of 18. So I've been around the higher ends of the sport, certainly in the junior world.
And you're now a tennis coach. I can see the little logo emblazoned on your top there. Is it Full Swing Tennis?
Yeah, so I run Full Swing Tennis Coaching, which is my company, and that started a couple of years ago. Before that, I spent the last 12 or so years working at a performance centre, so for the sort of county and above players in our region. That's in Cambridge, so sort of Eastern region area, mainly focusing on Cambridgeshire players, but we had players from Hertfordshire and Suffolk and Norfolk and stuff like that joining us there. So that's sort of the majority of my career has been based around that. And then, I sort of went off alone to do more of kind of the club and development side of things with Full Swing Tennis. So that's sort of an exciting new chapter that I'm currently pursuing at the moment.
And in terms of your tennis coaching, I understand that you have coached Wimbledon champions. Is that correct in doubles?
Well, yeah. So the current Wimbledon champion is one of the parents is a guy called Henry Patton, who used to train for a little while at Hills Road Sports and Tennis Centre, which is where I was working. So I ran groups that he was in, and I travelled to a few tournaments with him as part of a group. Not a massive amount, but maybe there was one nugget in there that changed his perspective on tennis for the better. I don't know. Kirk also had a part to play in that journey of Henry's as well on the S&C side. So that was great to see him go from when we worked with him, probably, what would that be, maybe 10 years ago, to see where he's got to now is I'm really, really tough for him. It's brilliant. Really, really brilliant for him.
Yeah, I think this is fantastic because the aim of this podcast for the listeners is we spoke about it in the first episode, is about helping parents to see if they can get their children to enjoy sports, but obviously there's that aspiration that they want their children to become great at sport. So you've got a wealth of experience in coaching, and what we're trying to do is to unearth the practical ways in which parents can and shouldn't get their children into coaching. So you're a really vital guest for us. I think this is something that we can talk about as we open this conversation up. So Let's get the conversation started. Where are we starting in terms of question? Kirk, I could see you're itching to get in with a question.
Yeah, well, so Matt and I know each other a little bit, quite a bit actually, but I felt that Matt was a great person to bring on to this podcast because, well, first of all, what we learned about Matt already is very modest and he won't blow his own trumpet, which is quite unusual in the world of elite sport, I've found. So I think, and he'll always give modest answers about the really important subject content that we've got in this podcast. But genuinely, Matt is one of the best tennis coaches I've ever come across. And I've come across quite a lot of tennis coaches, and I'll go into why that is later on the podcast. But Matt, I like to ask by asking, what do you think is some of the most sort of misunderstood concepts of youth sport? What are the most misunderstood opinions or whatever of youth sport today?
I would say thank you very much for that lovely spiel about me as well, Kirk. I appreciate that. I would say probably what I get, certainly in the performance world, is that the end goal is to be a professional. Obviously, parents who maybe haven't played the sport or don't play sports, that is what they see. Turn on TV, you're watching the professionals do their thing. So if your kid's in it, that's the goal. How do we get them that good? Rather than the goal is all the other elements like longevity, to enjoy the sport for your whole life, to meet friends, exercise, all of these kind of elements. Most of the conversations I have with the parents is how can we get them better? Like, how are they? So and so is doing a little bit more of this and that. How can we get my player or my kid to that? And it's very, very outcome driven, high performance kind of orientated. And I just love that conversation to be a little bit more, oh, my kid seems to be having fun. Are they enjoying the sessions? Seem to be around a really nice bunch of people. Because certainly up until they get to an age where they're making a conscious decision themselves to take it more seriously, which is probably not at least until they're maybe 12 or 13 minimum, that should be where the focus is. So I think the biggest misconception is that professional is like the outcome almost, and actually the journey and all the hundreds of other things you can do within the sport should be more of the focus.
Do you find there's a correlation between, the way parents are with their children, courtside and away from the court, with the best players that you have when they reach sort of that 12, 13, 14 age when they're starting to get serious, towards the players that are less good, I suppose?
Yeah, I mean, you can do it too, and you can tell what the parent's going to be like based on how the kid is, or you can tell what the kid's going to be like based on how the parent is. And the kids that are usually maybe slightly better younger, I would say, have a slightly more pushier parent, if you like, and are kind of more on it because they get their 7, 8-year-old out playing a lot of the time. But then by the time you get to 12, 13, 14, it's the ones that maybe have had a bit more of a relaxed experience with their parents, if you like, and the parents who just sort of let them develop in their own way, let the coach take control as well, not try to influence too much of the coaching side of things, that generally are better when they're older. So if I look at my journey, I wasn't the best player at like 10, 11, 12, but I was by the time I was 16, 17, because I played until probably the age of 12, 13, because my priority for going to training was to hang out with my friends again. And that was, so I was never really pushed to perform or to get certain results from this by mainly my mother. And whereas a lot of those players that were really good at that age and they were traveling everywhere and they had a lot of pressure put on them and a lot of you need to play, you need to get better, a lot of them had either given up or had been massively overtaken by the time they were sort of 16. Exceptions to that would be someone like Andy Murray and Jamie Murray, Andy Murray is my age group. So he was always the best, but his mum was very much just pushing fun games the whole time. So they would be doing a lot of bat and ball based games, but just for fun. So it wasn't get on the tennis court, hit, hit, hit. It was, as well, she's talked about in her book and stuff, it was playing table tennis on the kitchen table and stuff like that. So you can see by the drive of where the parents come from, kind of where the kid's going to go a little bit because of their approach to it. Usually, if you get a parent that's come from a sporting background, particularly the sport that you're dealing with, so for example, my kids, you appreciate that a little bit more. And so you just let them play and enjoy. And then when they want the input, you've got the knowledge to sort of give it to them a bit.
So Nathan so that's really interesting. Nathan, obviously a former professional footballer. Nathan, would you say that's the same in football?
Yeah, totally agree. I think we touched on this in the last one where I don't push my kids, never have pushed them into football. And I just want them to try every single sport. I never had that opportunity. There were some sports, like for instance, my son did BMX, bought him a nice BMX bike, lasted for about 2 months. But it's like, I was willing to do that, to be honest. Like, as long as he's trying, he's done golf, but he's academically better. And that's where I've always said to my kids that do well at school, just obvious reasons. But I totally resonate with everything that you were saying there. I'm a firm believer that kids learn better through play through enjoyment. So football for me it's like a chess game now. Everything, you go to the academies, you see what the coaches are doing there. It's all structured. You're trying to build robots rather than express. And everyone who wants to be Cristiano Ronaldo or Lionel Messi in football, kids these days, but you're not going to get those type of players because they're mavericks in themselves anyway. You build a team around those players. So, but with these children now, with what's going on with coaches and what parents see, they're just pushing them in the wrong direction. And like you said, they only see the end goal. They don't see everything else that goes on to get there. For me, it was very difficult getting rejected by multiple clubs as I was coming through as a youngster. And I didn't really fulfill or show my potential until I actually played for England on the 20s. So it was a long, long journey to get to that point. Then to maintain that for as long as I could, that's even harder. Yeah, completely understand that. I was going to ask you a question actually. Was Andy Murray's mum? Did she used to be a school teacher?
I have no idea actually. Did she? Maybe.
I heard that rumor
She's
that
certainly a
she's
tennis coach. She maybe. Yeah, I'm not
tennis
sure. I'm not
coach.
actually.
Yeah, no,
I've not actually read a book or anything like that. So,
but
but a very good tennis coach though. Very good tennis coach.
well, obviously,
But I think that journey is like, yeah. I mean, so football, like tennis, the chance of succeeding and making a living is as close to zero as possible. I think, amount of people doing it to those that actually make a full-time living. So for tennis to make a full-time living, you need to be, one of the best 200 players in the world. I mean, you can get away with having sponsorships and funding from people if you're a little bit maybe outside that to keep going, but essentially the second you stop, the money stops. And so, and one thing we tried to do, certainly from the performance side when I was at the Performance Academy, was push all the other outlets, American college being quite a big one. Being good at tennis opens up the opportunity to go out and get scholarships in America, playing for the senior county teams, and actually having pride in that, because that's tough to get into as well. As well as like being a all-rounded person and all the sort of challenges and difficulties you get, certainly in a combative one-on-one sport, which you can use throughout your life and transfer that skill. I love the fact that you let your kids do loads of different sports, because if you can't go tunnel vision on a sport too early, otherwise you'll be sick of it. And so I always tell parents and younger kids, do as many sports as you can. Everything will transfer into the sport you love best. So if tennis ends up being the sport, for example, that you want to take on forward when you get into your teens and you like that one best, if you've played loads of football and loads of other racket sports and everything, your agility, your focus, your teamwork, your training skills, your ability to be coachable, all of those things are worked on whatever sport you're doing. So
that was going to be one of my questions. Actually, is of the players you coached over the years, even grassroots up to elite level and whatever. What do you find that? Okay, yes, they're becoming better tennis players, but do you find that they're also gain skills outside of tennis as a result of playing tennis? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And is there any, I'm going to use this word again, but is there any correlation or link between what skills and what they excel at outside of tennis?
Yeah, interestingly, the first thing that comes to mind with that is a lot of ex-pros get headhunted by recruitment agents for city jobs and stuff like that because of the skills they feel that have been developed in terms of being pretty good under pressure, good decision makers, quite good dealing with confrontation, those kind of things, problem solving. Did I say that? Because these are the sort of things when you're on a tennis court, it's quite a lonely place. There's a lot of pressures involved. Someone's coming at you with a certain tactic and you have to adapt and deal with that. So those are certainly core skills you see in the better players when they finish, to the point where, people come to them for different jobs once they've retired. I think it's great for building confidence in younger kids. So as long as you don't get too forceful with them, their ability to come through difficulty is great from any age. Obviously you taper it to what age you're dealing with, but yeah, even things, I don't know, even going down to, say, my son, who's got his nativity at the moment, and he's nervous about going on stage, but we go and play tennis and I give him challenges and he overcomes them, and obviously gets a lot of positive feedback for that, so he knows that coming up against challenges he has the ability to get through them, and that's a 5-year-old version of it.
I saw one of those sessions with you and your son. He looked like he was giving you the right run around, to be honest with you.
Well, so he's 5, and my job is to keep it fun. I don't want to sit there and go, right, you're not swinging your racket.
He was amazing. He was
Well,
fantastic.
the goal is to not swing the racket well. The goal is for him to enjoy tennis. So he wants to do a little bit of hitting the ball over the net, and then he wants me to fire balls at him so he can dodge them and not get hit.
Yeah.
Which I think, but again, you look at that from a parent. You might, if a parent was watching that as their own lesson, they'd be like, "I want my money back." But for me, him having to dodge a tennis ball is building agility, having to watch the ball closely whilst he's having a whale of a time. And sometimes he'll hold a racket and try and hit them away from himself to defend himself. So he's working on his timing. So you're ticking all the kind of boxes in a way that he wants to come back again and again and do it. And as he gets older, that he'll move on to something maybe a bit more tennisy. So it's kind of like you got to taper to the age a bit, but it's got to stay fun like that.
So when you're dealing, you mentioned obviously pushy parents in terms of like you can tell how the kids are going to be based upon the parents, and you've just said there like for a parent who's not a tennis coach and maybe never played tennis themselves, they're only there because the kid wants to play tennis. Tell us, you must have dealt with some parents like that. How can you give us any examples, and how have you dealt with those parents in the past?
I feel I've been a little bit. I feel I've done all right negotiating some tough situations and some tough parents. A couple come to. I mean, so I've had. If I start off with like parents that have done other sports but not tennis, and as you're maybe coaching their kid, they're hanging over the balcony or standing by the side of the court, constantly kind of talking in their kid's ear. Work harder, get lower base, run faster, make sure you're doing this, that, or the other, which is difficult because you don't really want to, they're paying for the lesson. You don't really want to discourage them from being active in their kids' sort of development, but at the same time, it's a complete distraction, and I'm trying to say one thing, they're maybe saying something else. And even if maybe what they're saying isn't incorrect, it's not what we're focusing on at the moment. And if I'm structuring a pathway for this player of how they're going to develop, where we're doing certain things at certain times, which maybe the parent doesn't know about, even if I speak to them, they don't necessarily get it because they haven't done tennis before. They're just going to distract with their information, even though it's maybe correct information. So you've got that level of parent. Some of them come and stand on the court with you. It's like, we don't need to be here. All the way to, just some that cannot take any criticism whatsoever or listen to anything. So one person that comes to mind thought their kid was going to be the next world number 1 tennis player, but at 14 wasn't even in the top 5 in the county, let alone the world. So they kept entering them into tournaments way above their level, and as a result they turn up, lose all, really badly. And one of my colleagues went to a tournament with them, and he basically told the parent, you need to enter some lower events so they get to practice their skills, get some confidence from winning some matches and all this. And she turned around and just said he was massively unambitious, in probably a less polite term. So, we get parents like that, which is crazy. My main,
Yeah,
sorry?
there's a flip side of that, isn't there, as well? Because I remember feeling pressures that, I mean, not as much because strength and conditioning when I was an S&C coach prior to mini athletics. I would also come under pressure of parents wanting their kid to be doing something that I wasn't doing because I knew that wasn't right for them at that time. But then the issue is, as coaches, well, you either stand your ground and you hold your values, or potentially you lose income.
Yep.
That's what it essentially comes down to. And I think that, I mean, I can say this, you probably can't, but I suppose I don't know much about Emma Raducanu, but Emma Raducanu does I mean, if I was in that situation and known how many coaches she's been through, and I was the next up, I would be thinking, right, I mean, to work with Emma Raducanu would be great for my career, so I basically need to do what she wants me to do. And nobody's benefiting from that. So the pressure that parents put you under actually is, if they just want a yes man or a yes woman, well, it actually does affect the kids long term, because they really, they don't have the experience that you have as a coach.
The Lawn Tennis Association now, and I'm sure they do this in football and all other sports, actually have dedicated training for parents, and how to be a good tennis parent or sporting parent. And certainly from my side, if you're paying for the coach, technically, from what you're saying, Kirk, they are paying you. They are kind of your boss, but not your boss, if you know what I mean. But if they're paying you, they need to trust you. Otherwise, they shouldn't be paying you. And so I always say, look, if you don't agree with what I'm doing, or you just don't like it, or you want me to do something else, so you shouldn't be paying me. Save that money and pay yourself if that's what you think.
Yeah.
So as a parent to a person, if you're paying for the coach, you've got to trust them and let them do their thing. If you're unsure about the coach, then find a different coach. That's not always possible, obviously, because of the geography of it. I think that's really important. One thing I would say, the parents that I get on well with are the ones that maybe will ask me what we've been working on, or we have a dialogue there, so that when they go away to tournaments, the parents can look out specifically for things that we've been working on. Or I might tell a parent, do you mind doing some statting of a certain thing, like how many first serves they get in, or how many times they come to the net, or anything like that. Because one, that gives the parent a focus. They feel involved, but they're still doing what I would like them to be doing. And then when they feed back how the tournament went, it's not so much opinion based, of which maybe they don't really know what they're talking about, or they know a little bit, which can be a little bit dangerous as well. They're feeding back specific things that can be really helpful to us moving forward in our sessions. So the ones that do that, if for parents that want to be involved in that way, that works really, really well. And
carry on.
Well, no, but you've got the other parents that do nothing. They drop their kids off, don't watch, and go away. Take them to a tournament, sit in the coffee shop. That's fine as well. So I think there's a balance to be had. Definitely.
Nathan's putting his hand up like he's the coffee drinker. Go on, off you go.
Just on this, Nathan, actually, I was going to ask you, because you were a player and worked with lots and lots of different managers in your career as a footballer. Did you ever get to the stage where you're like, I just don't really, like you hear stories about footballers where they're kind of checked out from a manager and they're not really taking on what they want them to do because
losing the dressing room.
Yeah, lost the dressing room. Have you ever experienced the dressing room being lost? What does that look like?
Horrendous. It's really bad. So when I first signed for Forest, the change room was gone. Harry Megson brought me in, and I could see why. But the thing is, he was obviously they've been relegated from the Championship into League One for the first time in their career. I think so from the history books. Anyway, I stepped in there. Big money signing at the time, and it was a cesspit. It was so cliquey. You just had cliques in different change rooms, and signs of bullying going on there. I won't name names and stuff, but it very cliquey. It weren't great, and when you see change rooms like that, you kind of know, right? Okay, I just need to focus on myself, and that's why we were all very good individual players, but we weren't good as a team. And unfortunately, when Gary Megson left and Ian McParlin, Charlie and Frank took over, suddenly we all came together. And so you could just see it was a manager that was the issue at the time. I mean, I got along with Gary Megson fine. I think he tried to sign me again at Leicester City when he went there. But when you see it, it's not nice. But it's going to...
How did he change that around? Or how was it changed around?
Change manager. Just they changed, training became fun. Like, so for instance, like I remember it snowing one time and Gary Megson made us we weren't allowed to wear hats and gloves. And we weren't allowed to wear our tracksuit bottoms. We could warm up in them, but then we had to take them all off. we're doing shape on a Thursday. So Thursday was tend to be shape day. So yeah, we were doing shape, and literally you're standing around, it's cold, and there's snow on the ground. I just remember being freezing, and that just little things like that just got the players' backs up. It's just like, well, this is just pointless, right? And I never understood that. If you want the changing room to be together, you treat players with respect. Like, you let them have these things, as long as they're putting in the effort in training and you're getting the results on the weekend. You lose more than what you actually win, to be honest, throughout your career. But as long as you're putting that effort in and that determination and you're respectful, yeah, let some things go. Like, if, players want to wear hats in training, want to wear gloves because it's freezing, it's -1 out there, then just do the right thing and just do it. Why would you make a rod for your own back just to pee off a load of just to annoy a load of adult? Yeah, it's just one of those things. I was just going to go back to the whole parent thing, sitting in the cafe. So my son, 5-year-old son Lennox, he does tennis on Sunday morning at David Lloyd.
Good man.
Yeah. But at the end of the day, it was one of those things. It's like, well, while we're here, he needs to do something, because he didn't have any club. He didn't want to do football, didn't like it. And that's fine. And then I was in the process of trying to look for something for athletics, because my son thinks he's Sonic the Hedgehog. So he just runs really fast. So I said, right, me and my wife were like, okay, look, he's going to go tennis. Good, something to do as a family. Sunday morning, he goes tennis. My missus goes for a workout. I sit down having a club breakfast and all that stuff. But I don't watch any of the classes. I don't know. I know he's moved up just because of age group. But, when I've had a little glimpse through, he does look like he's enjoying himself. And he comes back and I say, did you enjoy it? Yeah, it was good fun. And he goes there every week. So I don't know much about tennis. I know the point system. I know I used to watch Pete Sampras and Andre Agassi back in the day. But as far as I'm concerned, as long as he's enjoying it, I'm happy. And I see it in many athletics as well. When I see kids come in to the classes and the parents sit down and they're not bothered. There's two things that they look at. Is my child enjoying it? First of all, is my child behaving themselves? Yes. And are they enjoying it? Yes. So they come back, and it works. We deal with children with all abilities, all different backgrounds, and it's great. It's really, really great to see and develop. I've been so impressed with my Saturday class. Well, actually, generally, all my classes, are seeing all the kids just develop little by little. And it brings enjoyment to myself, which makes me want to be a better coach, and I enjoy it and be enthusiastic to them. So I wonder if that's the same for you as well when you're coaching children. Sort of gone on a bit there.
Certainly now, certainly with full swing tennis, the number one goal with all coaching is that they have a good time, and that is, if they're getting better but having a bad time, we're failing. It's as simple as that, because they'll just get bored of the sport. So fun is absolutely number one. I like the call on behaviour. If I'm watching my son or my kids do anything, they need to be respectful first and foremost of what's going on, and not. So my daughter might be nattering with her friends quite a bit when a teacher's trying to do in her dance class or something. So that there's got to be the respect there. I think one thing that's really
about sport, because they learn that through sport as well.
Yeah, they do. Yeah,
that's one of the things they take from sport, which is great.
But do you think there's a correlation though, if they're having fun and you've put that fun, engaging session on for them, then they are more likely to behave better because they're not distracted by other things that they're finding more interesting. So it's important from that point as well.
Yeah, I think there's a line between kind of being disrespectful, or just getting overexcited because of the session, and you get a bit of both. So I was doing a group the other day where we have a big basket of balls, and I say go collect the balls up, and someone will get the basket and start charging around with it, and just causing madness. It's like, just, you've got to calm down a little bit here, because you're gonna. And in the end, the basket flipped up and nearly hit someone. So and I'm running around trying to stop him. But that's because he was having fun, and it was just like, you just go, yeah, I'm going to go and pick the balls up like this. So it's kind of like, I don't want to put you off, but like, just calm it down a little bit, versus chatting and just being rude, if you like, because they were just bored of what I was saying, which probably happens quite a lot, to be fair. But I think the parents' point of view, or what I would say also to parents on this is, you've got to remember also that you're a parent first, and the coach second. So like sitting and having a coffee and like just checking in to see if they're having a good time, and then asking, did you have a good time? And if they did, and they got a smile on their face, that's what being a parent is, right? You don't need to do more than that. You don't need to come off and go, right, did you keep your low to high swing? Were you always on your toes, and so on? Because suddenly they're like, oh, shut up, and so you're suddenly becoming a bit of a coach. So I think we have this with like maybe if players had a bad tournament, not played very well, not really happened, and they get a grilling from their whoever on the way home in the car. It's not acceptable, because they're probably upset, they're probably down, they know they haven't done well. What do they want? They need someone to just say it's all right, don't worry, and let's just go home and talk about something else. I feel like the players a lot of the time will talk when they're ready to talk. You don't need to force that. You don't need to tell them. And also, then talk to the coach. Maybe if you're a bit annoyed as a parent, ring up and let your frustrations out with the coach. But not blaming the coach. It's not our fault. But, just they were like this. It was really annoying me. Da, da, da. Let out that frustration. Don't let your kid know about it at all. And then I can take that information and feed it back to the player in a productive manner and say, right, I heard that this was a bit of a struggle. Right, why don't today we practice X, Y, Z, which relates to what they struggle with maybe at the tournament or something. And that way the player feels like their parent is their parent. I'm still the coach, but the message has got to me in a decent way. So that would be one thing I would say is really handy that parents do to stay as parents and not sort of infiltrate that way. The only thing I would say a parent could do is sometimes you've got to give them a little bit of a push. If you know your kid's being a bit lazy and won't get out of bed to go to a session, going, look, you've got to get up. This has got to happen. But as long as you know your kid will enjoy it, as long as you know it's not them going there that's putting them off. It's just other factors, and once you get them there, then they're good to go. Or if your kid's being a bit lazy on the court when they're a bit older, telling them to work a bit harder because they want to succeed in the sport and this is what needs to happen. So you've got to be careful, but you can judge it, and your kids to kind of give them the push where they need it. If you're totally laissez-faire, then they might not get to what they want, get where they want in the sport.
Yeah, agreed. Because they're gonna. Essentially, I have that with my own son. Is that he loves sport, but there'll be times when he's so engrossed in, dare we say it, an iPad, and it's time to go training. I'm doing this, but that's when I become a little bit pushy and say, actually, you've got to make the right decision here, because you do actually love it, and you just got to get under the cold into the play football, whatever. But I've got a question for you, right? My question is, okay, so give an example of a kid. They've gone through the mini athletics program and really got a massive enjoyment of sport and everything else they get from that. And they're 8, and they decide now want to play tennis, right? And the parent wants them to be really good at tennis, but they're a really good parent. They won't be too pushy, but what does their pathway look like, okay, for them to reach their potential in tennis, whatever that looks like, whether that's to be a good club player or even better than that? What does that pathway look like in terms of coaching through that period from age 8?
So what should the parent do for their...
And then what would you be coaching them right the way from age 8 onwards, and where does it start?
Well, you'd start by finding your local club and just getting them into the relevant group there that the coach would suggest for them. So if if you've got lots of kids, you might have a beginner under 8 group, and if they're pretty good, there might be better under 8 groups. And so we have a pathway of under 8 red, under 9 orange, under 10 green, and then when you're over 10, you're playing full like yellow ball tennis. So these are different sizes of court and different hardnesses of ball, and so there'll be that progression at the club that you join. When they get to a certain level, the coach at the club should suggest to go for county trials. So there's county tennis at all age groups, all junior age groups from 8 and up. And at some point, either they'll hold like open trials for club coaches to suggest certain players to go to, or as with my county, Cambridgeshire, there's weekly training at under 8s for the county, so players can come and just trial at any time. So then you'd be in, and if you get selected into there, then you're in that system, and then you usually then go to more of a performance setup, whether that's a higher end performance club or a performance centre, which is where I used to work at. And your training would then continue from there. When you get into the performance environment, that's usually where parents start to change a little bit, because you're around lots of other parents that have been in maybe a performance system, not a club system. So it's much more like tit for tat. I want my kid to be better than your kid because I want them to be selected into the county team, this, that, and the other. And it becomes much more competitive within the parents as well as the players when you get to that stage. And that's where you've got to be a little bit careful, I think, as a parent. That's where it might be better to go and have your coffee rather than hang over the balcony, so that you don't allow yourself to get a bit like that. And then from there, then maybe you find that you start having individual coaching. As you get older, you do more tennis. The LTA Lawn Tennis Association have rough guidelines on what they think is about right. So under 8. I mean, again, depends on level, but if you're pretty good, you'll probably want to do like maybe one individual lesson with a coach, and then have a couple of group sessions of an hour or an hour and a half, and some free tennis and some tournaments, and that ramps up all the way up to when you're sort of 14. And if you're really, really good, you should be playing most days, 2-3 hours or so. It's quite. I mean, the amount of hours they expect certain players to play when you include schooling and that, I don't know if there's enough hours in the day, but that's how your progression would go. And you play more and more, and then the goal suddenly becomes ranking, get up the rankings list, get into bigger tournaments, and so on and so on, and it sort of spirals up from there.
Yeah, it's interesting. Nathan, how many hours went you? Because how old were you when you went to your first sort of academy, if you like?
So I was School of Excellence. I was about 10 years old.
Yeah.
It was Crystal Palace, but Crystal Palace had a School of Excellence in Berkshire, so it was down the road from me. So
Okay.
Reading.
How many hours would you train a day, a week, for example, when you were that age?
Yeah, age of 10. So it's difficult to remember, but when I was in secondary school, for instance, in the football season, we'd play on a Friday with a school, Saturday morning district, and then Sunday morning was your School of Excellence team. And then on the way back from London or wherever, I'd come back and I'd catch the second half of my Sunday league team in the afternoon. And then on Monday, I'd play another football match. So like Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I was playing football, and then training every Tuesday and Thursday. It just ramped up. And I know
How old were you here?
14 years of age, the games ramped up. Back in those days, I think they had to shorten it really. And it turned into 7-a-side at once. I can't remember what age 7-a-side they play up to now. Yeah, that all changed. It got too much, and it was like child welfare and stuff. We did play a lot of hours, but I can't remember how many it was playing.
Do you have a limit on hours, the official limit that you can play?
Not back then.
No.
It didn't matter.
You do now, though, don't you?
Now you do, yeah. So you have to be careful, and you can only. So we had back in the day, you had football clubs that were trying to poach kids from up north to come down to London. So at a young age as well, back then. So probably about 14, try and get them into school down there. They take them out of school, but they won't really. And they'll say that they're putting them in school near to the football club. They weren't really going to school. The educational thing was just a cover up, really, just to make sure that they get the best players. And that was another thing, the pressure as well from being a child prodigy. I used to see it, so many players, child prodigy, and when they come to trying to get their first or second year professional, they wouldn't make it. They'll get cut off because the parents have pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed, and to the point where when you turn professional, it ramps up so much that everyone just drops off the waistline. I think there was recently a statistic saying that there is 0.06% of in the male game football that actually make it as professional footballers, and that's tiny percentage. And then it drops even lower to get that second year and third year and fourth year. So it's definitely, it just ramps up, and you just see a lot of players who've been pushed to the brink of mental breakdowns. I've not actually, unfortunately, I've known players that have committed suicide because it got too much. Because they get to a point where they think throughout their youth, they've been told they're the best. You're the next Pele, the next Alan Shearer or Paul Gascoigne or whatever, and they get to become professional footballers, and it's just not what it's made out to, because they get found out. Then they're jumped into the men's game, and they're like, well, hold on a minute, this is not what I like. They're either away from home, homesick, they're getting paid loads of money, so they're going out, turn 18, they're going out drinking, and then before you know it, the career's gone.
Where does that responsibility lie, though? Is that with the clubs and the academies that are bringing these players in, or is it with the parents, do you think?
It comes down to the football clubs, to be honest. I think back then the health and the welfare, it just wasn't great. I know players that had moved from other countries to come and play, and the welfare is just not great. It always comes down to the football club, the well-being. It's obviously different now, but there was a bullying culture coming up through. There was a lot wrong, a hell of a lot that went wrong, and I'm pretty sure in years to come you'll hear stories about the treatment of players, especially YT players, academy players back in the late 90s and 2000 bracket. But I think it's a lot better now, but it always comes down to the football club, because if you're signing a player, you're bringing them on board, you have that duty of care to tell the parents, say, look, don't worry, your son or daughter they're fine, we're going to look after them. But then the money thing, the problem with football is the money. And I've got friends who are agents, and there's kids that are signing 16 years of age, earning 20 grand a week. That's obscene. Could you imagine being, when you turn 18, go back to when you were 18 years of age, and someone's paying you 20 grand a week? Like, you're going to be like the parents are going to be like, wow, because the parents actually I think in some cases the parents get the majority of the money. The top football clubs will move the whole family near to the football club. And then there's a pressure there, because the parents are like, the football clubs will be like, well, we're going to pay you this wage to look after your child. We're moving you here. We've got you a house, blah, blah, blah. We can try and find you a job. It's not really quite the job that the parent wants. So they put it on the child to say, well, you need to make sure you do well at football, or subconsciously the child's in their head saying, well, I've got to do well at football because I need to provide for my family. That's not right.
Do the FA do the FA and the clubs sit down with the parents of the kids in the academy and stuff, and actually do like seminars and stuff where they talk to the parents about the realities, what's probably going to happen, or is it always about selling the dream?
It's a lot comes down to the PFA do quite a bit. Always have someone coming in, but they don't come in enough, and I think that might have been changing because there's been change of management and that. The FA could do a hell of a lot more. But then there's a lot of kids, and it all comes from grassroots, and it's just a shame that, because when I've been on the sideline, I was walking the dog the other day, and I was watching a grassroots football game. Just the pressure, just the shouting from the parents on the sideline. Just football needs to change its attitude. Parents need to change their attitudes when it comes to football. Your kids, just let them enjoy it. And I have so many questions. Like, some people are, my son is in this academy. He struggles with his right foot. What can he do? And I'll just be like, just listen to the coach and just let your son enjoy it. How old's your son? Well, he's 9 years old. Just let your kid enjoy it. Trust me, because if you're going to make it, it ramps up so much that it can suck the life out of you. You need to make sure that you prepare your child for the mental side of things, of what's to come, and that training comes like when they start secondary school, because there's so many changes in their body and mentality and stuff, and it's very difficult. But it can be the best job in the world, the most rewarding one in terms of being successful. I always firm believer, be successful, and then the rest will come. Don't ever chase the money. I always say that to kids as well.
I think that's the key question, isn't it? As a parent, if your kid is playing sport, well, what does success look like? What is success to you with your... I think we've all pretty much answered that one, but I think it's a really good one to come back to. When you do see those parents at the sidelines swearing at their kids, what are we trying to achieve? What do you want your son to achieve? You know, I think they might actually make them look at themselves to think, actually, yeah, I mean, what is it we are hoping to achieve here? But actually, it's a good question for you, Matt. It's a last question for me is, as a coach, in your role as a coach, what does success look like for you?
Yeah, it's kids playing for a long time, playing into their adulthood, playing, so from a performance-y side of things, players still inspired to play and try and get in senior county teams, for example, or still playing for their club teams when they're 30, 40, 50 and so on, because they still love the sport, they love being around the sport, they have created a community of friends. I still play tennis competitively for the county because I love the sport still, and I get to hang around people I've grown up with and people I've made sort of lifelong friends with, and that's what I want for everyone, for whatever sport they choose. But you have the love for the sport. So when we were at the performance academy, so I've obviously been to a lot of performance academies and this, that, and the other, and one thing that struck me was everything was so disciplined in terms of, right, we're doing this now, coaching. We joked about, like, coaches, the way they stand, they have massive wide stances, and when they feed a ball, they get really low down and do like a professional feed and stuff, and everything's like, oh my god, like, just calm down a bit, just because they're like county level players. The stats in tennis are same as the football stats of who's going to get anywhere, right? So let's keep it fun. So we're at our academy in Cambridge, Performance Academy, it was like, well, okay, we're gonna do silly stuff. We're gonna make it fun. Me and my colleagues would mess about a bit. We'd have whiteboards out and getting players to write. It was all about the fun and how can you make players just have a smile on their face. So and by without even realizing they're achieving their goals and getting what they need out of a session. We would have, like, a bit like, on Homes Under the Hammer, like, if there's a problem with something, then the music that goes over the background suddenly has the lyrics to what the problem is that's going on in their house or something. Do you know what I mean? So we would do similar things with, if we were, for example, one that I think it was, we're doing something to do with power or something. So we'd have The Power of Love playing, but we'd call it like we'd sing over the top of it and say, like, The Power of Spin, or so, I don't know, whatever it was we would do. Which, and you've got teenagers like looking like, who are these guys, looking all embarrassed, like, what a bunch of idiots, but at the same time laughing as well. Yeah. And suddenly then they go out and do the exercise and it's like 100 times better. So we were all about that, and it just changes the attitude of everyone, because at the end of the day, like, these guys and girls are probably not going to be professional, might get to American college, might play county tennis, hopefully we'll keep playing club tennis. And if we can keep on doing that, then we've succeeded and we've won. Because if you have that many people still playing, someone will come out of it. Someone will do particularly well. Someone will go a bit further, and we won't have put off the one person that would have been pro when they were 12 because they got sick of the sport and didn't want to turn up. And that's where the success lies for me.
What I didn't think would get mentioned
Say that again?
in this podcast. What I didn't think would get mentioned in this podcast was Homes Under the Hammer.
It's an inspirational show.
I absolutely love it, but I never expected that it would get mentioned on this podcast about wanting your kids to be great at sport.
That's an analogy.
That's all Matt gets to watch because he's always at home in the mornings, and then he's like a tennis coach, right?
Mate, I'm reading books. I'm doing research.
I want to ask you 2 questions to finish the podcast, and you're allowed to answer them with one word for each question. I'm going to put you on the spot. So in one word answer, what is the role of a coach in sport when teaching or bringing children into the game? What would you say is the best word to describe the role of a coach?
Inspire.
And same word or same game, if you like, for the role of a parent. One word answer.
Parent.
Oh, yeah.
Don't do anything else. Parent them.
Yeah, I think
some people's parenting's a bit different.
That's true. Yeah. Well, essentially, but you're the kid's parent. You're not their coach. You know, what should you do as a parent? You should love your kids. You should support them. You should make sure they stay on the right track. But you know, they don't need a second coach. That's not what they're looking for.
And that goes back round to what you were saying about if you're paying a coach to coach your children, let them coach the children. Let them, you know, inspire them, bring in the fun, teach them all the things that you want them to know about the sport. Because if you think you're a better coach than the coach them yourself, right? But
yeah. One thing I think, one final thing I'd say is that I think if you're a parent, you want to get involved, you want to feel like you're having input into your child's sporting journey, is that give them something. So we did this at the Performance Academy. Do something that you know will challenge them, that they'll find difficult, but will benefit their sport. So, for example, you say to your kid, right, you're having half an hour less a day on social media, and in that half an hour, you have to read a book or go for a run or take a cold shower or something that is uncomfortable, but you know will benefit their tennis and create a little bit of difficulty. And I think because you feel like you're doing something, you feel like you're pushing them, but it's not getting in the way, and it will help them generally away from sport too. So that's something I think parents could implement and enforce, because that's something I like to put onto the kids as well.
Yeah, and I think that is a fantastic way to end the podcast, because I think it's an immediate practical tip that anyone that's listening can take away to help their children hopefully become great at sport. But it is all about enjoyment. It's all about parenting as parents and finding a coach that they trust as well. So I think we are good to call it an episode. Matt, thank you very much for joining us. Thoroughly enjoyed the discussion. If anybody is interested in following your journey, Matt, can you tell us a little bit about how they can find out some information about you?
The sound's gone.
He's muted himself.
Do you know why I've muted myself? Because my son was singing Bon Jovi and the door came open, and I didn't want that to come through the microphone while you were. I didn't want that to come through the microphone while you were doing your chat there. Yeah, so I'm on Facebook and Instagram. Matt Taylor Tennis is my Instagram. Full Swing Tennis, my company, .co.uk for the tennis side of things. I work with Cambridgeshire Tennis as well. As county captain and all the sort of performance-y stuff around there. So that's my main kind of outreaches. But yeah, it's been great. Thanks so much for having me on the show.
No, thank you. We'll pop all your details in the show notes as well. And if you are down in the show notes, remember to give us a follow as well on social media and set all the episodes to auto download, and you'll be notified as and when we release new episodes. But for now, thank you very much for listening, and we will catch you all very, very soon.